comic books, cause I don't wanna look at nothing. This world's too much. I swallowed all I could.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Trade Talk. This is episode 35, and welcome to being back on track and putting these out weekly for you guys. Back on a weekly schedule, so don't expect 3 or 4 episodes over the course of a weekend to drop at any time soon, unless I really just fall off once again. But yeah, we'll be back on a weekly schedule for you guys. Hopefully it's somewhere down the line. I plan to maybe have a couple of guests on here where we kind of both have read something that we would like to discuss for you guys, or I will revisit the idea that I talked about previously and maybe doing something like more theme type episodes, or like reading a chunk of a series, like a bunch of books in a given week instead of like a bunch of different things. So these are strange times we're living in nowadays with this whole with the whole COVID-19 shit, the coronavirus stuff that's happening. And I know a lot of you guys are indoors now, quarantined, or trying to keep social distancing and from people. And, just staying indoors and doing your thing that way. And good job to everybody out there that is doing that. And if you've had the time with all your free time now to give this show a listen, thank you for that as well. Unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, but, is not to get into what I do for a living, but my job is still deemed essential for this period of time. So, I am still kind of out there doing my thing and going to work, and serving the public and that way. So, but while not at work, I have taken the time to stay indoors and social distance as well, like the rest of you guys. So, I've also been doing my part in that sense. So we'll see what happens. I only say that to say, I hope you guys are all staying safe out there, and this is a crazy time with everything going on right now, so I hope you're all staying safe and healthy, taking care of your families, and if you are part of the people that are still having to work as part of the workforce right now, good job to you, by helping us in our time of need in that sense as well, right? Because not everybody has that opportunity or given that choice, so thank you. All right, so good week today of books I wanted to get into. So without further ado, let's get into them here. We got 3 different books I wanted to talk about today. First up, we got Trees Volume 3, and that's written by Warren Ellis, art by Jason Howard. It's printed by Image Comics, and this was the return to the Trees series, which came out a few years ago, I think originally through Image Comics and Warren Ellis, and I had read it in issues originally, and then as Warren Ellis does, he kind of stopped writing the book for whatever reason, and he allowed him and the artist maybe mutually kind of agreed to step away from it for a little while, but I'm sure it's just that Warren Ellis didn't, he got involved in a lot of different things. I know he's been writing Castlevania episodes for Netflix, and he's been, he writes novels, and he does like a bunch of other shit. Warren Ellis is a busy guy, so, but he happens to do this with a lot of his creator-owned series nowadays. He might get, 6 or 12 issues of something out of him, but then if he grows bored of the idea and moves on to other things, or just kind of like decides, you know what, I don't want to do that anymore, he'll just abandon the series. So if there's one criticism I've had about Warren Ellis and his work on certain things over the years, it's that, right? And he's allowed to do what he wants to do, and usually whatever he does put out on a certain project is usually high quality. So if you get 6 or 12 issues of something out of him for any particular thing, that's good enough for him these days, and you should appreciate that he's still looking to write comics, I guess, and participate in this medium, because there's plenty of other things he does and he continues to do and work in other mediums, and so it's cool that he still kind of comes and writes comics. He is a great comic writer. I just wish there was something that he was long-term on nowadays, like something that he actually, we see more than 6 or 12 issues from him. But I'm appreciative of what we do get from him, and I'm a big fan of Warren Ellis, as you can tell. So this collected Trees, 3 Fates, 1 to 5, which was like the return to the series that Image had done this past year, where I guess they came out with just this 5-issue arc, and they actually just retitled it Trees, Three Fates, as opposed to Trees. And I thought I read online, I'm not sure if he's ever planning on coming back. I think he had read that they have no plans on doing any more Trees from here on out. But you never know. I think he kind of left it open-ended in that sense, and I might be wrong, but I thought I read that somewhere, because I know his other book that he was doing around the same time through Image that he's done with Declan Shalvey, Injection, he said he did plan on coming back to. Like, there's a whole other kind of 15-issue second part of that series that he wants to he wants to get done, I guess, and I think he's written, but he's now saying it's because of Declan Shalvey being busy. He's gonna be drawing some Punisher Barracuda series from Marvel more recently in the coming months, and then I know he's been writing himself now. He's been doing some writing as well, so I can believe that they're both kind of doing other things at this point in time, but I can't say that I've seen Jason Howard work on much else. I don't know if he does web comics or some sort of medium outside of comics. Maybe does animation stuff. That's something where I haven't been seeing his name pop up. But this was really cool that he did this book with him, because I felt Jason Howard's art style drastically changed with this book. And he even did another book, the Cemetery Beach miniseries he did with him in between Trees and this revisit to Trees with Warren Ellis as well, which that was okay. But yeah, his art style just kind of really changed up, I felt, for this. And I don't know if it's like the method and how he's drawing it, because like his character work, his figure work still kind of looks similar in style in that sense, but it's like the pencil work, like everything's kind of scritchy scratchy like on the actual art. So I don't know if he's inking it differently or penciling it differently, but it gave it a different look and texture to it than I felt some of his other things that were more like clean and polished and clean lined. And like I'm referring to other things that I've seen him do. Like I mostly know him from the Astounding Wolfman series he did through with Robert Kirkman years and years ago at the start of Invincible with Robert Kirkman. He did another series in the same universe that was involving this Astounding Wolfman character. And he drew that, and that looked very cartoony, that style. But again, that was that was a long-ass time ago, right? So this is when Invincible started, so I don't even know how long ago that is, like 20 years ago, 15 years ago or something, right? So that was, and then after that he did the Super Dinosaur book, which is more of like an all-ages book that Robert Kirkman did. But he continued to work with Kirkman, but I don't think I've seen his work outside of that on anything else that I can recall. So this was interesting to see him pop up as on the artist on the original Tree series, which I was a fan of. And this continued to be good. I really enjoyed this volume. It's like the other series, it seems that he's just telling stories. I think that maybe the first arc or so of Trees was a little bit more involved as to what was going on. Like basically they're calling it Trees because these like alien-like structures just came and like planted themselves on Earth. And then there's like black flowers that kind of sprout up like around the trees itself. And I think it brings out weird occurrences or things in people that are basically near them, like supernatural type stuff that happens, or just weird shit that goes down, it seems like, because wherever that is, shit like that is not too far behind from happening, I find. And even more so, like, I feel that, like, at the end of this actual 5 issues in this trade, you get the sense of that as well. And it seems like he was just using that as a backdrop to being able to tell stories about certain people in the world, wherever he deemed it necessary that he wanted to tell a story, all throughout different countries, throughout all like the 3 different arcs in this Trees series that he has done. Warren Ellis, he kind of just, it seems like that's the approach that they basically took. Because in this one, for instance, you get like a woman that I guess it's Moscow, like she's in Russia, and then like she's at the start you see this scene between her, I guess, and her, I don't know if it was her husband, but it was like a ex-lover, like a someone that she was with, I guess maybe a long-term boyfriend. Maybe it was her husband at that point. I don't know if that was ever mentioned, but they basically were just kind of always, they were on the rocks, their relationship, and it was always going back and forth about how he treated her and he didn't appreciate her and this and that. And like you get when the scene opens up the book, like you get them arguing in the middle of an argument where she's basically like he's trying to leave the house and she's freaking out and they're getting into an argument about this and they're yelling and they're swearing at each other and they're acting like, you know, like assholes to one another. And he's kind of, you know, trying to run out of the house in a huff, and he's kind of just had enough of it, and they're arguing back and forth. Meanwhile, he's not paying attention, but there's shit that's coming down overhead around them, like shit that's going down, like happening while they're in the midst like of this huge argument, and to the point where the one of these tree-like structures, I guess this was a flashback as to when it actually first they started planting themselves around the earth originally, which we saw in like the first tree volume. One just fucking landed on him and killed him essentially. And then they jump to the future, since this was from this past occurrence, and you find out the woman, like I guess she's like part of the cops, the police that work and live in this small town. And then from there you find out that there's like an old woman that's like running like everything in the town, like, you know, with like an iron fist. Like she's like some old woman that's got like the cops on her payroll, and like, and you know, people even make that reference, like, you know, she makes their trains run on time type of thing. Like she basically keeps everything moving and going in the town. I guess she's just like some corrupt warlord woman who's basically ran this small town for whatever reason in Moscow, like for years and years. And then in this, someone has gone, you find out towards the end, someone is basically was going to come take her out, like kill her and take her place essentially. And this woman, the cop, gets caught up in the midst of all of this. And there's a lot of murder and a lot of crime and deception and kind of mystery type elements of this case that are going back and forth, you know, like in the book. And you're kind of, as a reader, just learning bit by bit as you're taken through this journey of these characters that you've just been introduced to for the first time. And it's interesting, and again, like I said, unlike like the other tree stories, like this also doesn't seem to connect that much with the trees, like the alien things that are there. This is just a human story about people like in this situation. You know, you do find out that the wife, she's seeing like, it seems like she's having sort of like flashbacks of her husband being there, and she's hallucinating them. But I think there's a closer meaning to it in the sense that because he got killed by that alien thing, he's almost there, like haunting her, because this alien kind of energy or science or whatever is basically there in the town as a result of him dying underneath the structure. His body is able to basically, like, he almost like a ghostly spirit pops up into this story throughout, and, you know, is commenting and trying to help her along the way when this shit is going down, like when she's kind of involved with this, like, this crime mystery type deal that that she's investigating, right? So and then, you know, then she, when it all boils down to it, she finds out kind of what's been going on in the town, and she makes her own assumptions as to why she keeps seeing her husband and how that's connected, and it all by the end of it, it all kind of wraps up very nicely and gives you some sort of closure in that sense for the characters, the main character in this book, as well as, you know, for this series, I guess, in a sense, because if they don't do anything else outside of that, this would just be like 3 separate arcs of stories that they told about different types of people living in the world. Like, as I mentioned, with this trees thing in the backdrop, you didn't really need to know too much about it. It was just something that he used as a device to tell other types of stories, it seemed like, right? So, but in of itself, you don't really, I wouldn't even say you needed to read the other trees volume. All you have to know is that it's called Trees because, and like the structures that they reference in this, that's what they are. Like, that's what they're referring as to these trees, these alien-like pillars that just fucking landed all over the globe, and if for whatever reason they might have some connection to the things that happen to the characters in the stories that you're reading, you know, that's for you to figure out for yourself and make assumptions on, and You know what I mean? Like it's not clear cut any of it, and I think he just is doing a good job telling interesting stories, right? So, yeah, I like this Trees Volume 3. Check it out. Like I said, collects Trees 3 Fates 1 to 5. Warren Ellis, I mean, he still does a great job when he puts himself into anything he does. Next up, we got Oblivion Song Volume 4. This is written by Robert Kirkman, art by Lorenzo Di Felici. I think I talked about Volume 3 possibly on Trade Talk, if I'm not mistaken. This is Robert Kirkman's kind of sci-fi series that he's kind of doing through, he does through Image Comics. Another creator-owned title that he's still writing alongside. I guess he was doing Outcast still, and Die. These are the series that kind of came about after he wrapped up his long-running series like Invincible and fucking Walking Dead, of course, which is huge. When those were getting ready to wrap up, or maybe just shortly thereafter, he started writing Oblivion Song. I think he was writing Outcast towards the end of both of those as well, and which was a show. I think it was not it didn't last long. I think it had like maybe 2 seasons or something as well that was on TV, and I read that still, and that's all right. It's not bad. But this Oblivion Song, it kind of keeps getting better and better with each volume, I feel, because it was kind of a slow start and a different pacing and type of approach that Kirkman had taken, because it's something that was like a sci-fi story as opposed to like, it seems like he's definitely trying to branch out and do different types of genres outside of maybe what he was known for, just mainly superhero comics, which you can say about his stuff that he did prior to going and working and doing his creator-owned stuff with Image, like over in Marvel, and then you also saw done with Invincible. And then, you know, like Walking Dead, where, again, it is more of a human story. It didn't really have to do so much about the zombies, so you can say that was like a horror book, but not really. I mean, but then you go to Outcast, that's a straight-up horror book, again, with human drama-type elements in this. And he kind of brings that into everything it does, I find. But this is quite different. I just, you know, it was just a really strange sci-fi kind of book with interesting concepts, and the premise of it is really interesting, and I just really dug it. And basically, it's about like this guy who, there's this world that's parallel to ours essentially, and they can use this technology that they have to warp into their world. Like they press like a button, and basically it's like it warps them into this parallel kind of world. And I say that because, like, say we're standing on a corner block. That corner block is the same corner block that you would be on once you press that button to warp yourself with their technology into their world. But the block could be changed in the sense that there may not be a block there. There might be like a mountain there as opposed to the block. But you're going to be geographically in the same spot. It's almost like it's almost like a dark world, or like, you know what I mean, like kind of like a opposite kind of thing, like, or in Stranger Things, essentially what that world is, the upside down. So it's exactly the same but different in that their world is really inhabited by these weird creatures and like wildlife, and it's just much different in the sense of like the types of things that live there and can sustain life there, and just how everything works, and you know what I mean, like there's no humans there essentially, but it's still the same type of, like, it's still the same world in the sense that so in this, basically, for instance, there's a period of time where they got to go over there and they have to map out certain spots for themselves because they're trying to get these people that are trapped there, that are being held hostage, back to Earth, like back to their world. So they send a scout out for a few times prior to them actually going in and trying to save them all, to basically leave like landmark spots for them in their world on the ground, like flash back into their world and leave spots and make markings So they know that when they flash back to their world, that they're not going to be standing in a space where they're going to fall off of a fucking building. They're going to be in the middle of the sky all of a sudden, because like the layout of everything is different. So you can actually end up really hurting yourself or fucking yourself over by depending on where you're standing when you teleport back to our world. So I hope that makes sense for everybody. But that's the interesting kind of it's an interesting way of like of thinking and just concept. And you know, I'm sure it's been done before, but I really thought it was a cool story that they're telling with setting all that up. So then you got these two guys that are brothers. The one brother stayed in this world and ended up living there and raising a family and falling in love with it, and he actually really liked it, and he didn't want to come back. But then I guess, and then the one brother who was a scientist, that I guess he fucked up, and he ended up killing a whole bunch of the human civilization back when he actually found out about this place and bringing over people and all that, and he caused this like sort of almost cataclysmic event that wiped out a bunch of people as a result of his research, right? When he first discovered this. And as a result, there was a lot of people that were stuck over there that he couldn't actually get back. So at the start of this series, you found out that he was working on a way he went to jail. This whole thing, his whole career was ruined, all this shit. But he worked on a way to finally getting back over there. And for a period of time, he would go there and rescue people and bring them back to Earth. But the people that that he brought back to Earth didn't always want to come back to Earth, and he didn't understand that. Like, I guess some people found peace and actually liked their way of life in this new place. But to him, there's all these like crazy monster type creatures running around there, so he didn't understand why anybody would want to stay there, and he felt that they just felt that there was no way back and they were stuck there. And you know what I mean? Like, and they almost like exhibited like a form of like PTSD after like being stuck there for so long and then coming back to Earth and seeing how everything has been different. Everything's different now for them, right? So you got that whole thing. So now the brother and him now are both living on Earth now. His brother, he convinced him to stay for the time being, but then his family then got separated because he actually had brought them back to that world afterwards, like, and he was living there, and then the brothers would just like, you know, were keeping in touch between both of these worlds. But then when this volume starts off, the brother is now stuck on the human world, and his family is held captive by these like people that are called like faceless men, I think they call them. I might be wrong, but they're like these weird morphing fucking like plasm like type characters. Like, they're made out of like jelly almost, it seems like. They're like really tall and stretchy, and they have like no face. They just have holes where their faces are supposed to be, and they're just like made out of some weird material, like stretchy kind of like goo type stuff, and not like malleable kind of they look like. So they're very weird looking creatures. Like, the actual design of the creatures is very interesting looking, and I think it works for this artist because he lays down a lot of line work, it seems like, in his art. And I'm not totally in love with the artist and never have been. I think he's fine. I do think he's gotten better over time, like compared to some of his older stuff that I've seen that I've also talked about on the show in the past. I think he looks better in this than he did previously, but still, some panels I'm just like, I don't know about that. Like, some things don't look great. His faces don't look great time to time. So yeah, I mean, the art is fine. It's not my favorite, but I do like the book, and I like the idea and the concept of it. But basically, this volume was them trying to save and bring back some of their people that were being imprisoned by these faceless men in that other world in this, and they're basically trying to rescue them. So they're running this like over this mission of going over there, like a whole squad of their army people going over there, saving the people that are being held hostage and bringing them back. Meanwhile, the faceless men are trying to get intel on the human beings because their world is basically falling apart. It's like almost like the world is sick in itself, and their world, they're worried about their people. They're worried about their world ending. So they're trying to collect intel from the human beings for them to be able to somehow use that to help, because so they're both studying each other essentially in this from their own separate, and they're trying to make their way into Earth's world and learn about their Earthlings because they want to actually go there and live there, because their world is gonna probably end at some point. It's like, you know what I mean? Like, it's slowly dying, it seems like. So it's interesting. It's interesting, kind of the back and forth between these two places, the characters involved, the relationships between the people in the book. And by the end of this, I was like, I need to read this next volume. So if you're a fan of Robert Kirkman, I'd say definitely check this out. And if you're not a fan of Robert Kirkman, I'd say definitely try to check this out, because I just feel like this is a little bit different than some of the other stuff he's done so far. And at this point in time, I don't know, it's just really, really interesting to me, the position that they're in and the story that's being told here. So I really dig this book, Oblivion Song. And last up, we got the Immortal Hulk Volume 6, written by Al Ewing, art by Joe Bennett on issues 26 to 27 and 29 and 30. And then on issue 28, you got two different artists on it. You got Tom Riley, who is a young up-and-comer, which I'll talk about in a moment. His style is really great. And then you got Mateus Barguera, who I've seen on... I talked about one of his books on here not too long ago that he drew. Really great artist. I'm blanking on the fucking name of it right now. It's written by Cy Spurrier, and I'm going to have to look this up because I'm blanking on the fucking name. But he's really good. And that issue was nice. It worked out really well, I felt. Coda. Yeah, that's right. Which just wrapped up, actually. Coda. Very, very good. I really liked that series a lot, and he's the artist on that. Really good artist. Anyways, Immortal Hulk, always a good book. One of Marvel's most popular books at the moment. The fact that it's a Hulk book that's really good is refreshing to hear, and just because like his runs, I don't feel other than what a lot of people point to being the definitive run of Hulk comics, I guess. At least the last one we had was like the Peter David run, where he wrote the fucking book. It felt like for 20 years, I guess, back in the day in the 90s. So a lot of people say that's like one of the best runs, but I think normally I don't think they get a lot of play. Hulk books, you got to be a really big fan of the character. I don't know if there's any standout runs in recent years that people really point to. There's a lot of really good stuff, decent stuff out there. Don't get me wrong, even stuff that I own as I look at my shelf right now, but not on this as well regarded on this level. This Immortal Hulk series has just really been getting all the praise, right, that it deserves right now. It's a great book. Al Ewing's doing a great job, and yeah, this continues to be great. Basically, this volume focuses on, and which just collects issues 26 to 30. It's focused on the Hulk versus Roxxon, and Roxxon's person who owns the company is like a Minotaur, as you might have seen during Jason Aaron's run. He basically kind of set up that whole character and storyline, and from there he's been kind of involved in a lot of the rest of the Marvel universe. Other people have used this character. He's basically, he's the evil corporation. Like, he's the guy with too much fucking money that has his hands in a lot of shit that goes on in the Marvel universe, right? And he has his followers, and essentially that's what happens in this book. Like, it's almost like it's a bunch of evil Trump supporters or something. Like, you get this evil corporation that's run by a fucking Minotaur that reveals himself basically as the person who owns this company now. And like at this point in time, like throughout this book, to better reflect the fact that it's monsters against monsters here, because it's the Minotaur versus, running this company versus the Hulk that is trying to suss him out and, cause problems for him and make him look bad. But he's just basically walking around as a Minotaur at this point. Like, because before he could not even before, he still can. He can transform into a human form when he's not the Minotaur. But in this, like, he just like embraced it now. So the whole time you see him in this book, he looks like that. And then you get issue 28, you get two different storylines in this, the one that Tom Riley drew and one that Mateus Bargueras drew. And I think for the ones that they picked for each story for the Mattel worked out really well. And the Mateus Bargueras story is basically, I think it's, what is his name? Dario Argus or Arga, basically the name of the Roxxon guy who owns the company. He draws that story, and then Tom Riley draws a story about a security guard who, again, almost sounds like I'm sure at least that's how it comes off to me. I'm sure he must be commenting on people that are bigots, or just people that are, or blinded by their way of thinking that the world should work, and finding someone finally that to look up to, because they also agree, and like they also feel the same way that they do about the world, like, and that's why I said Trump supporters earlier. So like in this, you get like some story about a security guard, and there's like a uprising of people that are against Roxxon, like protesters that start running around in Hulk masks. And then by the end of it, cleverly enough, you find out that Roxxon is actually the ones that are making the Hulk masks that these people are donning, like buying and going against people like Roxxon and trying to make a statement with the Hulk mask. But meanwhile, they're actually making a profit off of it, and it was almost their idea. And they have to basically make a profit off of it, because in this, the Hulk finds a clever way to take away some of Roxxon's power by making their stocks plummet, putting a dent in their infrastructure, like, because they kind of are like a company that has their hand in a lot of things, like including like people's data and like internet and all this kind of stuff. And the Hulk, does damage to the company itself by, taking them out at the knees, like taking them out where it really hurts their wallets, right? So I think there's a lot of interesting things that are being done in this book for our Hulk book, a lot of interesting things that are being commented on. But then at the same time, at the end of the day, you do get some Hulk action like you would expect, like him throwing down with some big monsters in this. One shows up by the end of this book that's really interesting, I'm looking forward to. And he just feels part of the larger Marvel universe in this, and that like all the familiar characters and faces of different Hulk people have showed up throughout each and every arc of this book. Like he's been weaving them all in slowly. You get Doc Samson in this. You get the Red She-Hulk, which is Betty Banner, or I guess his ex-wife, or and then like you get what's his name? The other guy that used to be Hulk for Amadeus Cho, who was Hulk previously before Bruce Banner became Hulk again. It showed up in this. So like, it's just, if you're a fan of the Hulk, or this world, and the characters that kind of always like revolve around the Hulk and the other types of Hulks, and like he's making interesting points about how they're all connected, and he's delving into a lot of psychological things in this book, as well as the fact that there's this crazy devil Hulk that's like fueled by the devil, that's evil, that's like a different personality altogether that we have not yet met, the Bruce Banner's. It's just so fucking good, and I could go on forever talking about this book, but you need to be reading Immortal Hulk. It is really, really great. And Joe Bennett, whose work I've seen before, but I never thought of, is just doing, like in this regard, is doing the work of his career, I think, on this book. He does majority, like you get maybe one issue of volume where they do something like this, where they bring on some more interesting, different artists. Sometimes, most of the time, it's been like indie artists or lesser known artists type. And this Tom Riley guy, who's up and coming right now, he looks like basically like a Michael Walsh. Again, he's in that school of like artist that looks like a Michael Walsh, like Chris Somney type thing. But even more so because I associate Michael Walsh with being similar to artists like of that style. But at this point, seeing Michael Walsh work for such a long time and seeing Tom Riley is newer to me in that sense. I closely relate his style to look like Michael Walsh, because a lot of it looks very, very similar to me. And I mean that in the highest regard. I love Michael Walsh's work, and his stuff looks great as well. And Mateus Bergeras as well. Just really great. Volume 6 of Immortal Hulk. Definitely check it out. I really like this book. And I think that if you've been living under a rock, you may not have heard about this book at this point, but please pick it up, because it's well deserving of all the praise that it's getting through Marvel and the awards. I think that it's already won this past year. All right, so that will do it for me today, guys. Thanks for tuning in as always, and we'll catch you guys next time.